Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us to learn about the Lenape Regional High School District Bond Referendum, which is included on the November 2nd general election ballot. I'm Matt Webb, Assistant Superintendent of Schools and the moderator for tonight's virtual community forum. Now let's meet our panelists for this evening's virtual community forum, who will review the financial benefits of funding projects through a bond referendum, as well as the list of proposed projects and how they will benefit the students, staff, and the LRHSD communities. Dr. Birnbaum, Superintendent of Schools. Connie Stewart, Business Administrator. Heather Zanakis, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Tony Vora, Director of Buildings and Grounds. And Shawnee Principal, Matt Campbell. Other important people tonight are the ones watching this YouTube live stream. Here's how they can submit questions for panelists. Visit lrhsd.org/forum question. That will be along the bottom of the screen throughout the forum. Complete the form so we know which panelists should get that question. Listen for the full hour because we will try to group questions together by topic. That form asks for an email address so we can send you an answer if we don't have time to get to it during the 1-hour forum. This forum will be a great way for our community to learn more about this bond referendum. Now, Dr. Birnbaum will introduce our Board of Education.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Mr. Webb, and it's great to be here to present all of the details about our exciting bond referendum that's coming up. And yes, other important people that are online watching this, not only our community members, but our Board of Education members. We do have an 11-member board, but of particular interest to the Shawnee presentation tonight are some familiar faces that you may have seen around Medford and Medford Lakes. We have, of course, we have Mr. David Stowe from Medford, Mrs. Allison Eckel, also from Medford, Mr. Steve Lee from Medford Lakes, and our board president, Mr. Barry Fitzgerald, who represents Evesham, but he's the president of the entire Board of Education. And they're very interested to hear the feedback from our community, the questions that our community has, and to make sure that we are doing a great job of getting the word out to everybody about the bond referendum. This forum is just one of the many ways that we are getting the word out about the bond referendum. It started last spring, where we gathered a group of community members. They were parents and staff members, and of course students, because student voice is really important. And we are our communications committee, and they have helped us shape our messaging along the way. And ever since last spring, every board meeting, we've been giving an update to the public, telling them about all the exciting updates to our bond referendum. We have a great extensive website that we hope that people visit. It is packed with information, with videos and frequently asked question page. There's social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and we're constantly pushing out little messages. We hope that you follow them, retweet them, repost them, share them with people in your community so they understand what's a part of this bond referendum. We've gone to lots of Oktoberfest. We visited Medford and Mount Laurel and Marlton, and we handed out flyers and talked to people in the community. And it was really great just trying to learn what people wanted to understand about the bond referendum. There was a mailer that went out to every household in the 8 townships that sent to the Lenape Regional High School District. We've had our back to school night presentations. We've made appearances at local PTA meetings, PTO meetings. We just recently were at the Medford one at the Allen School, and we got a lot of good interest there and good questions. And one idea that came out of there were making sure we're putting up signage in prominent places. So you'll see lawn signs now out about our bond referendum. We just really want to make sure that everybody in our community understands what a plus this will be for our 4 high schools and at no cost to our taxpayers. So thank you for being here, and please ask your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Birnbaum. And as a reminder to our community, if you have a question for any of these administrators tonight, please visit lrhsd.org/forum question. So first, let's briefly answer, what is a bond referendum? Okay, well, first, it is a vote to approve a sale of bonds. school districts can sell bonds to generate funding and buy them back with interest over time. It's similar to a home equity loan to make improvements and pay that loan back over years. And right now, the timing is right. We are approaching a payoff point for a previous bond, and we have this unique opportunity to get over a third of the cost of our projects covered in state aid. This way, we can update and enhance all of our schools with zero change to the tax rate. Dr. Birnbaum and Mrs. Stewart, how did we get to this point where the Lenape Regional has a bond proposal on the November 2nd ballot?
Unmute, Connie.
Sorry, thank you. First, we had to update our long-range facility plan, and all of these projects that are on the long-range facility plan, they identify our future facility needs. And we did that so that we can address those facility needs strategically.
Another way that helped us refine, so we have this big long-range facilities planning list, but we also were engaged with our community in 2018 when we were doing our strategic planning process. We had about 400 community members come to our 4 high schools, and over 1,000 people respond to surveys and to give us feedback on what they liked about our schools and what they want to see improve in our schools. And 2 things that constantly were brought up at all of those meetings were air conditioning and more programming for career pathways. So you will see those also included in this bond referendum as a direct result of what our community members have told us.
We also took a look at our fiscal strategies to meet the immediate and long-term needs with careful planning to select projects that will qualify for the maximum state aid. But only through a voter-approved bond referendum can we access this special type of state aid.
Thank you, Mrs. Stewart and Dr. Birnbaum. Now let's talk about how to vote so everyone knows how to vote in advance and on November 2nd.
So the way that we are going to seek voter approval for this is for everyone to look on the ballot. When they're in the ballot box or their mail-in ballot, you'll see a couple of general questions. And one, look for the box that says Lenape Regional High School District question. It's just one question, but in that question, it does delineate the cost per facility that this bond referendum will have and how much state aid that we're going to get as a result of us applying for state aid for these projects. So you'll see that question right in the middle of the ballot. And there's lots of ways this year to vote. The state added longer time for in-person voting. So starting October 23rd and going all the way up to Halloween, people can choose 7 different locations in our county. If you live in Burlington County, you can go to any one of these 7 locations and cast your in-person ballot. If you like to participate in the mail-in ballot process, you'll see it on your mailer. One thing to note, I know in my township, the questions were on the back of the ballot. So I had to know to turn the ballot over and looked for those questions for when I was casting my vote. And then of course, you can go to your traditional polling place that you're used to going to every November election. And that would be on November 2nd.
Thank you. That's a lot of detail about voting, but it's so important. Your opinion won't count unless you submit a ballot. So all details are on the lrhsd.org/vote website, including an application form for a mail-in ballot, the times and locations for these special early voting polls, and a link to search for your polling place on November 2nd. As a reminder, tonight the public can submit questions for our panelists. Just visit lrhsd.org/form question. Also, this forum is being recorded so that people can watch it later. A link to that recording will be on the referendum website. Now, before we get into the specifics of the referendum, we want to share a short video that gives a good overview of what the Lenape Regional could do at all 4 high schools. It's about 5 minutes long, and then we'll explain how we can make improvements with no change to the tax rates in any of our communities.
We have a plan to modernize all our schools, and property owners will incur zero, that's right, zero new taxes. On Tuesday, November 2nd, the Lenape Regional High School District will ask voters to consider a bond referendum. Only through this type of vote can we access more than $24 million in state aid to help pay for over 1/3 of our capital project costs. Our plan calls for updating building exteriors and instructional spaces, replacing HVAC systems and adding air conditioning, customizing classrooms to expand career-focused curriculum, and upgrading athletic facilities with LED lighting at all schools and turf fields at Lenape and Seneca. With voter approval of this tax-neutral bond proposal, we can tackle these projects and more with zero change to the tax rates in all Lenape District communities.
We can keep the tax impact to zero, largely because the projects in our bond referendum qualify for over $24 million in a special type of state aid. This is money we either use it or lose it. This special type of state aid is only available to us through a voter-approved bond referendum, and it's a different pot of money than the money that we've seen continuously cut by the state through our school funding formula.
That $24 million, combined with old debt reaching its payoff point, results in $67 million worth of improvements with zero change in tax rates. Proposed projects are considered must-haves for the district. They're on the district's long-range facilities plan, and many were also mentioned by community members during the 2018 strategic planning process. Students, staff, and visitors will appreciate seeing air conditioning on the project list. All 4 schools would get upgraded heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, replacing some systems that are over 60 years old.
Upgrading our HVAC systems will enable us to run more efficiently, to have better control, to temper air better, to have more air efficiency into our buildings, be overall more effective for the learning environment. It'll also save us a lot of money in the long run. We have systems that range from mid-50s to the 70s to the 90s. Newer equipment runs more efficiently. It requires less maintenance. Now's the time to do it. I mean, if we have the ability to get 1/3 of that money back, it's a win-win.
It's a routine that I will walk into my classroom at 7 o'clock in the morning and it will be 85 degrees, 88 degrees. If the temperatures are 90 degrees outside, usually they're 90-something inside.
Newer HVAC systems will also further improve comfort levels, student focus, and air filtration and flow.
We have our students that just can't tolerate the heat in the classroom. When they come to the nurse's office, they know there's some relief.
Another set of projects in the referendum involves customizing classrooms and adding equipment for career-focused learning. Regardless of home high school, the LRHSD will open its expanded career pathway programs to any district student.
On top of their 4-year high school education, we are going to build in specific career-related opportunities as they matriculate through their high school experience.
We realize that not all of our students' career goals will require a college degree, and we aim to support those students and their training for high-demand positions in our newly renovated educational spaces, as well as providing internship opportunities to provide hands-on experiences for those students.
The exteriors of our schools are also due for some maintenance, as are the athletic facilities. The bond proposal calls for turf fields at both Lenape and Seneca. This would create equity among the athletic facilities at all district high schools. And turf is the modern standard for high schools. Athletes who play on grass can be at a significant disadvantage during high school and at college.
We've had the turf for about 13 or 14 years, and going from the grass to the turf was amazing for our program, for the sports programs in general.
Shawnee athletes and fans, as well as community groups, will benefit from LED lighting upgrades at the stadium and a renovated press box, where so much coaching and scouting takes place.
The capital projects in our bond referendum directly support our specific plans to ensure the future of the Lenape Regional High School District. Even replacing aging systems such as water heaters are carefully timed out so that costs don't pile up. Part of that careful timing is to fund these projects through a voter-approved bond referendum, which gives us access to that special type of state aid, over $24 million to the Lenape Regional High School District, about 1/3 of the cost of the entire project. This will ensure we can invest in the future of all of our schools in the Lenape Regional High School District. It's a plus for all homeowners, and it has zero tax impact.
To learn more about the proposal, follow LRHSD Vote on social media and visit lrhsd.org/vote for additional details and voting information. The Lenape Regional High School District bond proposal will be on the general election ballot, with mail-in voting starting in early October and in-person voting beginning October 23rd. The final date to cast a vote is Election Day, Tuesday, November 2nd.
That's some exciting stuff for the future of the Lenape Regional. We'll get into the details about those projects in a few minutes. But first, let's learn how a bond referendum is part of a strategic approach to funding those upgrades. And for that, we turn to Mrs. Stewart, the district's business administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Excuse me. Right now, there are two financial elements that are falling into place that makes this the perfect time for us to update our schools. The first is the ability to be eligible for debt service state aid, and also the fact that we have existing debt that's being paid off. The debt service state aid that we are eligible for is only available to us if we have a voter-approved bond referendum to help offset the costs of these capital improvements. We are constantly looking ahead for what the needs will be in the future for all schools. As an example, our current HVA systems, they're getting too old to be efficient or reliable. Along with other improvements that were on our long-range facility plan, we packaged these projects into a bond referendum that could result in that special state aid. Our initial estimate of a near zero tax impact was extremely conservative. From our long-range facility plan of the projects needed now, 5 and/or 10 years out, we were able to streamline those projects into the package that was sent to the State Department of Education for their approval. Only the state can determine which projects are eligible for this special state aid. When we received our final eligible cost letters from the State Department of Education, they approved almost the entire package of projects to receive this aid. After giving this great news to our financials advisors, they were able to plug in the new state aid numbers into their estimated cost analysis, and it came up with a zero tax impact. There are two buckets of funds that make up our total tax levy. For this year, it is over 129 million. One is the general fund, which is about 95%, a little over 122 million, and the other 5% is made up of the debt service, which is a little over $6 million. If the referendum passes, these percentages will remain constant. With voter approval, we will have a consistent debt service tax levy and receive $24 million from the state to offset the $67 million of projects. Without voter approval, we will not receive the $24 million in state aid. Paying for them within the regular budget does not qualify for this special state aid. These projects must be done at some point in the future. So if not through an approved bond referendum, these projects will need to be paid for out of the general fund with no state aid to offset the costs, which means things will be needed to be taken away in order for us to update our facilities. Having a zero tax impact for the tax levy for debt service will continue the approximate payments that we have been paying for over the years.
Can I just add something there too? You talked about that, if the bond referendum doesn't pass, some of these items will need to be done and they'll have to come out of our regular operational budget. We all know, if you've ever paid attention to what's been going on in Lenape Regional High School District and in Medford, our area school districts, as well as 200 school districts in New Jersey, are constantly getting reduced by state aid. part of the S2 funding formula for school districts. And we're losing millions of dollars each year of the general state aid for a regular operational budget. Like you said, this is a different pocket of money that the state sets aside for capital improvements. And our local taxpayers are contributing to that pot of money. And the only way we get access to that pot of money is if the voters approve this bond referendum. The other thing is too, is, this $24 million is just one of the ways that we look for ways to get things for our school district without impacting our taxpayers. We look for grants, we seek donations. And again, this capital improvement debt service aid that's available to school districts is one way that we're going to be able to get $24 million worth of improvements towards the $67 million bond referendum at zero tax impact for our community members.
That's right, Dr. Birnbaum. State aid is a key factor in our ability to do these projects without raising the tax rate. The proposed project costs are an estimate of $67 million, with the state covering 1/3 of those costs, $24 million. And if we don't use it, we lose it. The $43 million difference will be covered by the same tax rate that exists now. This approach uses a continuous tax rate to fund the continuous costs for maintaining our excellent schools. Bottom line, with state aid and a steady tax rate, we get $67 million worth of upgrades with a zero tax change.
Thank you. It looks like we have a couple of questions related to finance. Mrs. Stewart, question number 1. Would the tax rate fall if voters reject the proposal?
Thank you, Mr. Webb. But no, the tax rate would not fall. This proposal is being made as Lenape Regional High School District finishes paying off a bond that voters approved years ago, and the final payment is lower than it has been. The final $3 million coming off the debt tax is small in comparison to the tax rate for the entire district general operations. Taxpayers not even notice, they won't even notice the difference between the 21 and 22 years. However, excuse me, the must-do items in this proposal will still have to be done. HVACs, roof replacement, restroom renovations, concrete restorations, and other projects must be addressed to maintain our facilities. And the district has a strong asset for the real estate market. Without a voter-approved bond referendum, the must-do projects would be funded 100% from local taxes as LRHSD, excuse me, loses the opportunity for more than $24 million, excuse me, in the specific state aid that we will be getting.
Thank you. And question number 2 related to finance. Why don't the projects listed on the website have a cost assigned?
That is a very good question. The estimated cost that we have that came up with the $67 million, we really don't want to advertise those costs because all of these projects have to go out for a public bid. And we don't really want all of the vendors knowing what some of those estimated costs are. We want them to be competitive in their bidding. And with us advertising that, it really would violate the bidding laws.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you, Mrs. Stewart and Dr. Birnbaum. As a reminder, the public can submit questions for our panelists. Visit lrhsd.org/forum question. And also as a reminder, this forum is being recorded so people can watch it later, and a link to that recording will be on the referendum website. Now we're going to turn it over to Anthony Vora, our Director of Buildings and Grounds, to begin the discussion of projects we would fund through a bond referendum, starting with upgrading heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems at all 4 schools. Mr. Vora?
Thank you, Mr. Webb. All right, so let's start off with the HVAC part of the scope of the job for the district. Most of the project costs through this entire referendum is air conditioning and heating upgrades. So I'm sorry, I'm missing my thought here. so through these upgrades, we're certainly going to improve the building environment, make it more educationally sound. But everyone just needs to remember this, that we're maintaining the facilities the best that we can. Adding air conditioning, it's a bonus, but we still have to heat the building. We still have to make sure that, you know, it's sound in the wintertime too, that, you know, we provide heat for students. That by law, we have to have heat. By law, we don't have to have air conditioning. So we have systems that are breaking down that we're saving parts for over the years. Our 60-year-old systems, we're saving parts for those. And eventually we're going to run out of those parts. And, you know, we're not going to be able to buy parts. And if we don't have them in stock, then, you know, again, we're not going to be able to maintain the educational environment. So with that said, you know, we need to make sure kids are comfortable. There's kids that come there with breathing issues, asthma and such, and it's just not an environment, not only for the students, but for the teachers too. I mean, it's a struggle. Just think about sitting in a room, you know, that it's 90 degrees outside. And this was talked about in the video, and it's usually a lot hotter inside when it's 90 degrees outside without air conditioning. So this is an improvement that we need to take advantage of now while the costs are going to be covered. Through this referendum too, Shawnee being our second oldest facility, the upgrades there are definitely needed. A large portion of the air conditioning and heating money is going to go towards many improvements at Shawnee. We're going to improve classroom spaces with air conditioning. We're going to improve the gyms, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But the control systems will be upgraded. We'll be able to do real-time control upgrades. You know, changing the temperatures, monitoring of airflow, things like that we have to do remotely now through several types of different systems that we have that try to work together with our old systems. We're going to have one system that works, you know, in conjunction with the new installs. So we're looking forward to it. It'll be much better.
Mr. Rohr, can I interject, please, about the concept of air conditioning? This is something that is obviously near and dear to my heart. And we're going to see a little bit of it this week as the humidity increases and the temperature. You know, our school year starts at the very end of the summer, and it goes and, you know, ends in the very beginning of the spring and beginning of the summer. So really the first month and a half and last month and a half of the school year are really impacted by weather. And when the heat gets to a point, as you saw Mrs. Pulliam talk about in the video, it becomes very uncomfortable, and that's going to impact learning. And when you take a look around, most of our students that are coming from, you know, when they come from middle schools and the elementary schools, they're coming from air-conditioned buildings. And so now it's one of the additional transition things that they have to deal with when they come into a high school. There's a lot of things that happen naturally in their transition process that they have to deal with. And, you know, being in a climate control building or not being in one at this point, is one of them. And it becomes very problematic. And especially when you talk about at the end of the school year, because our kids are really taking some high stakes testing. And when they're doing it in environments that are not comfortable, it does impact their ability to not only learn, but also perform. And we're seeing that at the end of the school year. And so air condition, and it's been something that comes up each year from our students and from the parents. And this is something that, you know, in those public forums that were held, you know, that was definitely very high on people's priority to get in our buildings.
Thank you for that perspective, Mr. Campbell and Mr. Vora. We do have a couple of questions related to projects. Question number one for Mr. Vora. Will all of the rooms in all of the schools be air conditioned once the improvements have been implemented?
Yes, all educational spaces will have air conditioning, part of the new system. And that includes the gyms as well. We've got a lot of feedback from people that say, hey, listen, you have all these events in the gymnasiums, and gymnasiums our size that hold the amount of people that we do, you know, we certainly can bring that heat load down with air conditioning and make it more comfortable for our athletes and spectators. And also for the kids that are in physical education classes. Those spaces are used throughout the day, and it'll be a benefit. So.
Thank you, for sure. I think any community members and parents that were at our freshman orientations can attest that our gymnasiums do get very hot. Question number two, why isn't the maintenance of these systems covered in the regular operating budget?
Well, I'll be happy to field that. And of course, Connie, as the BA, please jump in on the fiscal side of this. We do budget for maintaining our systems every year. But going out for bond referendum is part of that careful budget planning, right? So we know that we're maintaining our buildings. Mr. Voro's staff does a great job making sure that our facilities, they look great, and everything is running as best as it can run. Mr. Campbell made a mention at a recent PTA meeting. Shawnee is over 50 years old. We're over 50 years old. Things are starting to go. Things are going at Shawnee. And some of these big ticket items are things that we are planning for when debt falls off. We have foresight in our long range facility plan. As that debt's falling off, that's when we're going to start replacing those things, those big ticket items. And so that's part of the budgeting that we are doing.
Sorry, that mute button. Also, when we have larger scale updates that are needed, school districts do strategically include these updates and other maintenance needs in one bond referendum. And again, a voter approved bond referendum opens the door to specific state aid. And without it, the district's regular budget would have to absorb 100% of these costs. For Lenape Regional High School District November 2nd referendum, state aid is expected to continue to be about 1/3 of the cost of updating our schools. So that equates to more than $24 million in new funding.
Thank you. Now we're going to ask Mr. Voro to talk a bit about the proposed projects in the referendum that will impact our athletic facilities.
Yeah, so first and foremost, one of the biggest things out there people are talking about is the turf. I'll just touch on the turf as it relates to maintenance. So think about our grass that's used throughout the year at our facilities that don't have turf, and that grass is used constantly. We have to maintain it. We have to cut it. We have to fertilize it. We have to make sure there's no divots in there. We have to make sure there's no holes in there after use. It just gets torn up. And the thing about grass is this time of the year and in the spring, you're not going out there with another sport shortly after you just played a hard football game or a soccer game or a lacrosse game. You're not going out there if it's torn up from the weather. It's not going to happen. With the benefit of turf is, just aside from the maintenance, the ability to put 5 sports out there. It's lined already for all 5 sports, and you could just rotate one game after another. It doesn't matter. There's no impact from weather on turf. So, kids have the ability, our athletes and our community both have the ability to go out there. In some of our communities, we'll have our athletes out on the turf, and then the community comes out, uses the turf, and then right after that, we're out there using a turf. So it's a benefit for all. And I think Mr. Campbell will probably touch on the equity part of it and some other things that, he benefited from turf too.
Absolutely. I'll jump in here when we're talking about the turf, because we were lucky to be one of the first schools in the district to get turf. And it is a game changer for our student athletes, because, as Mr. Vore was talking about, just the ability for use and being able to transition, it makes scheduling so much easier, because there were times back pre-turf where if a Friday night football game took place and it was a muddy day, and that field, the stadium turf the stadium grass was unusable for a while. And as the season wears on, it takes such a beating. And so then you can't play some of these other sports in the stadium, where now with turf, you're able to bring, as Mr. Vore said, one sport right after another without any problem like that. But getting into equity, we're talking about student athletes that may be looking to play at the next level. And when you talk specifically about field hockey and soccer and lacrosse, those sports, turf is so different. I'm going to speak from personal experience. I live in a small town. My kids play on grass, not very good grass to begin with. And we just got done playing a game tonight on turf. And it just, the game is so different, and it changes the ability for the student athletes to learn to play at a game that if they are going to go to the college level, that's where they're going to be playing. So it's getting them ready to do that and lets them perform at a higher level, which in turn makes them, more accessible to, maybe getting scholarships or the ability to play at that next level. So having turf at Shawnee for the past number of years has been a great thing for us. And it's, it's something that would be beneficial for all of our student athletes at all 4 schools in our district.
Thank you. We have a couple questions coming in regarding turf and our athletic facilities. So the first question is, why should we put money into turf fields when they are not for education and not every student plays a sport? Mr. Vora, I think you touched on that, but can you elaborate a little bit?
I can expand, and of course, Mr. Vora, please jump in. But our turf is not just used by our athletes. And I know Mr. Campbell talked about a couple of specific sports, but our band, we just hosted a very big band competition at Shawnee High School. We just hosted one at Seneca High School that wasn't on turf. So our band members are also state championship programs that deserve the sure footing when marching. And I don't know how they play an instrument and march at the same time. I can't imagine them doing it on uneven ground. Also, all of our health and PE classes, every student has to take physical education all 4 years in New Jersey. And our student athletes are not the only ones using that turf. Every student in Shawnee High School does have access to that turf during PE every time they have PE outside.
Dr. Brown, if I could also interject on the idea that we have such a well-rounded educational program that's not limited to just what happens in the classroom. And our student athletes learn a lot of life lessons from competing. Our marching band members, all that competition that our extracurriculars provide our students is part of the overall educational experience. And so our goal is to provide the highest quality educational experience for our students. So is it an actual classroom for health and PA classes? Yes, it is. But I do believe wholeheartedly that our extracurriculars are part of that learning process that goes into a student's experience in high school.
Thank you. And one more question regarding athletic facilities. What are the press boxes used for?
I could touch on that, and maybe Mr. Campbell too. So they're used for sporting events. To announcers, coaches go up there, and the thing about the renovation of the Shawnee press box, what we're finding is that not all coaches can go up there and perform the job that they need to do when they're looking at a game with. And I'm answering these questions because I'm part of trying to redesign and renovate this press box, and the feedback I got from athletic directors, but more importantly, we try to get students up in there too through our LDTV program, and they can't actually fit up there with the coaches. The layout isn't proper, the windows aren't proper. So we've learned a lot over the years in our press boxes of what we can accomplish as far as educating the kids too. And part of that renovation is going to be our ability to help kids get up inside there and be part of the program, as well as the coaches having a benefit of being able to do what they need to do from up there. But I don't know if Mr. Campbell can touch on, how it would improve his coaching staff and students out there.
Well, it would make it easier for the coaches that are doing the scouting, and not only scouting, but also, watching the game. They coach, especially in football and soccer, they're able to get up there and see the game from a different level. But the announcers and the officials are up there as well. So those press boxes have a lot of people in them. And we want to make sure that we have one that is designed to best maximize the experience when up there.
And Shawnee has a recently upgraded sound system, which sounds phenomenal. I can hear the announcements from my backyard. But the sound system is stored in that press box too. So we want to make sure it's a really tightly fitted, clean facility that can safely protect our sound system as well.
Thank you for that insight. As we mentioned earlier, we went through a strategic planning process in 2018. And this helped us gather input from many stakeholders across our district, including more than 1,000 community members. This helped us set future goals for the district. And one thing that consistently came up was the need for enhanced career-focused programming to support the interest and ambitions of all Lenape Regional students. And now our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Mrs. Heather Zanakis, will discuss how our bond proposal includes funding for in-district career pathway programs.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. We have been focusing on two graduations, our two graduation initiative, for many years. So we focus on the importance of our students' high school graduation as well as their college graduation. And that's very important to us. And we also want to ensure that this initiative also provides opportunities for students who may not need a college education to reach their career goals. So what we heard out of the strategic plan was that we need to have ways for all students to reach whatever career goals they have and best prepare them for that. So talking about the Career Pathways program, enhancing what we already have, building upon that and making it even better. Our goal is to add more educational spaces, upgrade them with the latest technology, the career industry technology that exists out there. And we want to give our students that opportunity to interact, as well as forging relationships and partnerships with local businesses who are ultimately, looking to take people onto their workforce. And that's essentially what we're trying to do with these career pathway programs. And we know that in this situation where we are right now, there are a lot of opportunities in the job market, and we just want to best prepare our students for whatever it is they're interested in. So specifically, we're going to enhance and add 3 new programs. At Seneca, there's an automotive program, which is already working in the works, and students there have the opportunity to build on their automotive skills, and there will be a certification program that they'll come out with. At Cherokee High School, we are deepening the carpentry program. We have woodworking, but now we will enhance that and build that into a carpentry program where students that are interested can attend Cherokee High School and be part of the carpentry program. And in Lenape, we have the metalwork fabrication welding facility that we will be working on as well with that program. And students from all 4 of our LRHSD schools will be able to attend any one of these programs anywhere they're interested. And those are just 3 of our different pathways that we're looking at. And the idea is to allow students to dive deeper into what they're looking for, what they're interested in, maybe want to take a deeper dive in high school, and then have some hands-on experience, partnerships with the communities, and be ready right out of high school to jump into the workforce. Specifically, there is a huge need right now. One article put out recently, Automotive News, I believe, was the author, but 642,000 jobs will go unfilled by the year 2024. The Tech Force Foundation study says that in the diesel and the collision technical world. So that's a huge number. That's a big need that we have in our society right now. And if we can prepare the students to go on, graduate, after they leave us and be ready to jump right into the workforce, that is something that we hope our career pathway programs will prepare them for. And again, all of our students would have opportunities to go to any of these programs.
And Ms. X, if I could jump in as well, talking about these programs, while at Shawnee High School, we send an overwhelming majority of our students go on to 2- and 4-year schools. And as she said, the 2 graduations is something we've always focused on. We need to make sure that we're focusing on each and every student. And, there are students in our buildings that are not going to college. It's not a good fit for them. So they do need to have these skill sets that are going to help them find, a future for them that maybe not be involved with going on to college. And these programs that are going to be enhanced, we do have them in their buildings to a degree, but in the enhancement of these programs is going to just better off prepare these students for making this transition right into a career that is something that they're looking forward to and it suits them better.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell and Mrs. Zanakis. And that truly is remarkable, Mrs. Zanakis, that one stat, over 600,000 job openings in just one sector, and just 3 years away. So that truly is remarkable. We did have a question come in, Mrs. Zanakis. Doesn't the county-run vocational high school, BCIT, have space for auto and carpentry instruction?
Yes, they do. And so, why would a student choose to continue on in LRHSD? One could ask that question. Well, there's a lot of reasons. With these enhanced programs, we can offer a pathway that a student is interested in, as well as all of our other programs in our program of study, their athletics, their all the clubs and activities that they have access to. And so they can take a pathway, they can jump on this career pathway that they may be interested in, but then they can have all the other high school experiences as well. And they can stay in their community home-based school that they always, imagine themselves going to, and still be part of the Lenape Regional High School District. So I would say to that we can offer both.
Yeah, I mean, as a parent in 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade, you have choices in New Jersey, right? You could choose to homeschool, you could choose to send to a vocational school, you could send to a private or parochial school, or the public school. So if your choice is public school and we didn't have these types of career pathway programs for you, then we aren't meeting the needs of all of our students. And so, while we do have woodworking, right? But instead of making picture frames, we're going to teach kids how to make frame out walls, right? Real construction, tangible skills that they can get hired in the carpentry world right away. Use a chop saw, carry a tool belt. Mr. Vore was much better at talking about these needs, but I mean, the welding program. In another statistic, Mrs. Zanakis, we were talking about earlier, was the American Welding Society. They project that there'll be a deficit of 400,000 workers by 2024. I mean, you can't drive anywhere in our towns without seeing a now hiring sign. Something crazy happened with COVID. And if we can help kids be, productive in our society, get a job in a career that is much needed, this is going to be a great thing for the Lenape Regional High School District students to have the choice to come here and take a program in one of our career pathways.
Outstanding. Thank you, Dr. Birnbaum and Mrs. Zanakis. Switching gears here, back to Mr. Voro. Upgraded HVAC systems and athletic facilities and the expansion of career pathway programs are among the most significant projects in the Lenape Regional Bond Referendum. But the full list also includes many projects to update interior and exterior appearances for both improved efficiency and learning experiences for our students. Mr. Voro can briefly cover some of these additional projects.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. So along with the air conditioning, which I already stated is the largest scope of this bond referendum, there's many other things that come included into this bond referendum. Interior lighting, we're going to upgrade interior lighting in all of the classroom spaces, all of the hallways. We're going to upgrade to LED lighting, which is much better. And I have to be honest, that technology, as I'm seeing as we're discussing this, it's probably changing already. LED technology is just changing so much, but it's becoming better, and it makes for a better environment. You can see better. It doesn't cast a shadow such as fluorescent lighting does. And you just have more adaptability to a classroom, ability to dim things in certain rooms that require that. So LED lighting, not only is it better, it saves money. The cost is I don't want to get into the cost part of it, but the cost is a lot less to maintain, and it just runs more efficiently. So with that, it's going to cost less to operate. We're touching on some of the classrooms. For example, Shawnee is going to get some restroom upgrades in the plumbing. Some of the electrical upgrades are going to happen there. And people are probably asking, hey, what's a water basin upgrade? So if you drive by Shawnee after it rains, you'll see a big lake out there. We didn't make a man-made lake. That's from the water not percolating into the ground the way it should. So No matter how much we like the ducks and the swans that come out there, we have to have that water actually dissipate properly. So that's part of this referendum as well. Once that's done, you're not going to have the lake anymore, but I'm sure Mr. Campbell will probably get some ducks from somewhere for anyone that wants the ducks back. And we're also going to be repairing some concrete on the outside of the building. As buildings age, concrete ages. We live in an environment where water gets in cracks and then it freezes, and then what happens? It expands and it breaks things off. So as part of the regular maintenance and upgrade, that we need to do in our facilities, this referendum will assist us to do this larger scope of work, as it was discussed prior, when we talked about finances. But other than that, we're looking forward to it, and these are going to be substantial upgrades to our facilities and help. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boro. We'll now have some time to answer some additional questions about the bond referendum on November 2nd. As a reminder, if you have not sent any question yet, please feel free to do that now. We will do our best to answer before wrapping up at 8 o'clock. And if we don't get to your question tonight, we will answer you by email. To submit a question, visit lrhsd.org/forum question. And as a reminder, this forum is also being recorded, so you can watch it later. And a link to that recording will be on the referendum website. Okay, so we have a question. I guess this could be for Mr. Boro or one of our other panelists, but why aren't these items planned for within the regular budget?
Yeah, I could start off with that. So I know Miss Stewart's probably going to jump in on this too, but a lot of these projects are costly, and they're not something that we could just plan in our regular budget. We do plan things in our regular budget as far as maintaining our facilities, but when the scope of work gets to be this large, it's not something we could take out of our general fund and do. Again, we've talked about S2, how much money is being taken away from us. And, all this money that's being taken away is going to take away from our ability to maintain our facilities. So what do? Do we stop educating kids and just make a perfect facility? No, we have to still educate kids while at the same time trying to manage and run a facility that's educationally sound. So without that money, we're not able to do that. So
yeah, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Well, I was saying, don't forget too, I guess the big point here too is, we can do these projects through the bond referendum process by getting the state to pay for a third of it, right? That's the big key right there. So we can put these in our regular budget, but then that's 100% of the cost goes on our taxpayers' backs. So if we can do it through the bond referendum process and time it when old debt comes off and take advantage of state aid, then our taxpayers aren't footing the entire bill for these projects. So this is why we wait until a bond referendum to do it, because we don't want our taxpayers to pay 100% of the cost of these things that maintain our facilities. We want some of that state aid to come back to us because we don't get it any other way.
Dr. Birnbaum and Mr. Boro, I couldn't have said it any better. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for taking the time to learn about the Lenape Regional's bond referendum before casting your vote in the November 2nd general election. We know the interest and involvement of our community shows in the LRHSD, and it makes us even stronger. If you have additional questions, you may find your answer on the lrhsd.org/vote website. Also follow LRHSD Vote on social media. And finally, you can email additional questions to vote@lrhsd.org. Remember, your opinion won't count unless you submit a ballot. All the details are on the website, including an application form for a mail-in ballot, the times and locations for those special early voting polls, and a link to search for your polling place on November 2nd. So thank you to the panelists and the public who turned out tonight. As we have said, a link to this recording will be on the referendum website. Good night, everyone.